Hi everyone, we're gonna discuss the characteristics of motion. The correct use of motion depends upon one's knowledge of the purpose of each motion and the rules governing it. These rules can be better understood and therefore properly applied by knowing the basic characteristics of each motion like the following. Whether a motion can be made while someone on the floor, whether it requires a second, whether it is debatable, whether it can be amended, the vote it requires, the order of its precedence, to what order it can apply, what motions may apply to it, and whether it can be reviewed. Can the motion interrupt a speaker? Generally, all motions can be made only while no one has the floor, because as a rule, once a speaker is recognized, he is entitled to the floor for so long as he does not violate the rules of speaking. So, a, any motion should be raised if there is no speaker appointed on the floor. For if a speaker is appointed on the floor, he or she cannot raise a motion if it is not urgent. But there are, however, certain motions which, because of the urgency, may interrupt a speaker. The motion which requires immediate attention, which affects the rights and privilege of a member or the organization itself, are the question of privilege. It involves the convenience, comfort, right, or security of the organization or any of the members. For example, if a member of the group is speaking softly, he or she can raise a motion of question of privilege to request that a member would should speak loudly. In point of order, it is to bring the matter involving an error in procedure or non-compliance with or in violation of the rules of the organization. For example, if if the presiding officer or any member has violated the rules of the organization, he can raise a point of order to request that a mistake has been made. In the parliamentary inquiry, it is to be informed on matters pertaining to parliamentary laws and procedure. He or she can request a parliamentary inquiry to the speaker that to clarify questions pertaining to parliamentary procedures or the rules of the organization. In the point of information, it is to be informed on any matter related the pending business or to the assembly and its activities. He or she can raise a point of information to the speaker to be informed of all to request a point of information to be informed at all times of the questions that are pending in the assembly. The other set of motions which can interrupt a speaker because of the time limit prescribed for their proposal and proposition are: number one, to reconsider a question where a vote was taken on the question sought to be reconsidered, or in the case of a convention at its next meeting or business day, because failure to make it within the time limit preludes its presentation at any other time. So, two, now object to the consideration of a question. Discussion of a question may be objected to at any time after its presentation to the assembly, but before any substantial progress has been made in its deliberation or before any other motion has been applied to it. For this reason, it may be made even if someone has the floor. So, you can interrupt the speaker so that the objection of the question can be talked about. Number two, divide the assembly where to verify the vote taken in a question or to secure a more accurate account of the votes, to ascertain that the chair was correct in determining the results of the vote, and to see if some members have changed in their stance on the question after it has been rediscussed. Number four, appeal from the decision of the chair. It is to ask the assembly to decide whether the decision made by the presiding officer should be upheld or overruled. Number five, call for orders of the day, where a call for the order of the day is called because a certain questions that is put in the special order, and and because of the program of business fails to take them up at their appointed time. Number 2, does the motion require second? As a rule, all motions require a second, but there are some which do not because, strictly speaking, they are not motions in the sense that they offer a proposal. They are classified as motions of inconvenience only. So, motions must require a second, and some are not required to have a second because they are classified as motions of inconvenience. Motions that does not require second, motions constituting demands or requests, the division of the assembly, division of a question, point of order, point of information, point of parliamentary inquiry, reading of papers, and motions constituting an assertion or of a right or privilege where objection to the consideration of a question, call for orders of the day, question of privilege, withdrawal of motion, and change of vote. The reading of paper where they let the speaker read its book as his speech. Number 3, is the motion debatable? Motions may be debatable or not. The motions which can be debatable upon are those that of substantive proposition requiring consideration by the assembly, while the undebatable ones are those which are procedural in character and generally decided by the chair. So, motions that can be debated are substantive proposition that requires consideration by the assembly, and while the undebatable ones are procedural in character and are generally decided by the chair. The following motions are fully debatable. Main motion, where it is subject to full debate because they present matters of business which require thorough examinations and deliberations by the assembly. Number 2, to amend if applied to a fully debatable question. Since amendments to main questions and to all other debatable motions necessarily dwell on the essential features of the principal questions themselves, it follows that motions to amend should likewise be open to full debate. To postpone indefinitely, it is to suppress or reject the question to which the motion is applied, without the benefit of a vote on the question itself. This necessarily involves an inquiry in the merits of the question, and it is considered to fully debatable. Number 4, to appeal unless applied to undebatable questions when related to indecorum, transgression of the rules of speaking, or priority of business. An example of an appeal to be debated is when an appeal from the decision of the chair transfers the responsibility of the decision from the presiding officer to the assembly. The presiding officer is entitled to explain his decision, while the appellant has the right to argue the reasons for his appeal. In all likelihood, some members would support the chair's decision, while others may hold the opposite view. So a full debate becomes necessary to determine whether or not the chair's decision should be upheld. But if the chair's decision is undebatable, it is not necessary to be debated. Number 5, to reconsider, it is applicable only to main motions and amendments. Number 6, to resign or appeal, it is only applicable only to main motions. If both motions, if approved, reopen the main question to debate, and for this reason are themselves fully debatable. Number 4, can the motion be amended? Since the purpose of amendment is to modify or alter a motion, it stands to reason that only such modification as are variable in form of capable of modification can be amended. So it can modify the duration of the time of the recess, the effectivity, and etc. In the following motions, however, amendments are restricted to the variable details of each proposition as correspondingly indicated. Number 1, to fix the time at which to adjust duration, effectivity, and place of adjournment. Number 2, to postpone indefinitely, duration of postponement, and kind of orders to be created by the postponement. Number 3, to modify the limits of debate, time element, and manner of limiting or extending the debate, so they can extend the time if they want to, or lessen the time if they want to. Number 4, to take recess, durations and effectivity of recess, so they can take longer recess or short-term recess. Or number 5, to refer to a committee, kind of committee, its composition, and instruction to be given it. All other motions can be amended because they are either requests or demands which do not offer possibilities of modification. 5. What vote is required? All motions generally require a majority of vote for their adoption. The few motions which demand a bigger vote or those which seek to set aside certain fundamental principles of parliamentary procedure or the rules of the organization must therefore be supported by more than a majority of the members. So, the motions must be voted and the majority of the members should approve of it. On this basis, the following motion as a rule require a two-thirds vote. Number 1, to call for the previous question, it requires a two-thirds vote because it restricts the right of debate and needs a two-thirds vote for their adoption. Number 2, to modify the limits of debate, it needs a two-thirds vote because it sets aside a previously adopted rule of the Assembly. Number 3, to suspend the rules, it needs a two-thirds vote because it involves a deviation from the rules of the organization, and its purpose it is believed that the minority will be protected from arbitrary measures which the Assembly may decide to take by suspending the rules of the organization. Number 4, to object to the consideration of a question needs a two-thirds vote because this motion transgresses the fundamental rights of a member to bring before the Assembly any proposal for its consideration. Number 5, to amend adopted constitutions, bylaws, and rules of organization and standing rules needs a two-thirds vote because it is based on the principle that since these bodies of rules have already been adopted by the organization, their subsequent alterations would in effect set aside the general will of the organization. Number 6, what is the order of precedence? A knowledge of the precedence of motion is essential so that one may know what motion is in order at a particular stage of the deliberation, thus minimizing, if not totally eliminating, confusion on the proceedings. So, the order of precedence eliminates the confusion of the proceedings so that they can proceed smoothly. 7. What motions can apply to the pending of motion? The following rules generally determine what motions can be applied to a motion pending before the Assembly. Number 1. All motions can be applied to main motions and amendments except to object to the consideration of a question which cannot be applied to amendments and committee reports. Number 2. All motions capable of modification can be amended. Number 3. All debatable motions are object to the motions for the previous question and to modify the limits of debate. Number 4. Only main motions and amendments can be referred to a committee. Number 5. Only main motions can be postponed. Number 6. The motions to object to the consideration of question can be applied only to the main motions. Number 7. Every decision of the chair can be appealed from. Number 8, every motion can be withdrawn. Number 8, to what motions can it apply? The applicability of a motion to other motions can be determined by knowing the purpose of each one of them. The following is a summary of the respective functions of the different classes of motions and their applicability to other motions. Main motions propose subjects for the consideration of the Assembly, and they cannot be applied to other motions. Specific main motions are essentially main motions but are identified by specific names and governed by specific rules. They apply only to general main motions, although the motion to reconsider can also be applied to amendments and appeals. Subsidiary motions modify or dispose of main motions. They do not apply to privilege and incidental motions except to appeals in certain cases. Except the motions to amend and to modify the limits of debate, a subsidiary motion does not apply to to another of its kind. Privilege motions involve questions related to the prerogatives of the organization and its members. They do not have any direct relations with other motions and are therefore not applicable to them. Incidental motions generally pertain to the conduct of business, which the exception of the motions to withdraw and to object to the consideration of a question, which may be applied to main motion, and the motion to divide a question, which may be applied to main motion and amendments. Incidental motions cannot be employed on other motions. Number 9. Can the motion be renewed? Once the motion is declared lost, it cannot be renewed. The same meeting unless there has been a substantial change in Parliament situation. That is the occurrence of any change in the business that would create a new situation, thereby giving probable cause for the Assembly to adopt a different stand on the question sought to be renewed. So the motions can only be renewed if the Parliament situation or any business has been changed, and thereby giving probable cause for the Assembly to adopt a different stand on the question sought to be renewed. But some motions cannot be renewed at all at the same meeting because once defeated, the possibility of the Assembly changing its mind on the question would be remote even after a change in Parliament situation, at least at that particular time. The situation is different in the case of a motion to adjourn, which may be renewed after some progress in the proceeding because it would be illogical for the Assembly to essentially object to adjournment.